Hello, faithful and unfaithful listeners alike. This is the second part of a two-part conversation, so if you haven't listened to the first part, circle back and listen to the episode before this. Also, Lee and Simon touch on some difficult material, including suicidal ideation. So, please proceed with caution. Oh, Lord have mercy.
I really need a mute button for my... Sorry,
Somebody has not netted today.
I'm waiting for my midlifing branded neti pot to arrive.
I think we should just go with a midlifing branded netty / douche pot. So we just go with, like, rather than doing both, we need to get some class designers on, don't we?
A netty douche.
A netty douche.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you could use, midlifing netty douche for all your RFI.
For all your... That sounds like a... Okay, never mind.
Thank you.
This is a podcast in which two friends have serious conversations about silly things and silly conversations about serious things.
I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller.
Welcome to Midlifing. And he wore a suit because he understood that how people viewed him and the others in that march mattered, and that they couldn't pigeonhole him and write him off as being a lefty hippie.
Yes.
Because he was wearing a suit. Mm-hmm. And I reckon Extinction Rebellion, it would be an utterly different thing if they stopped wearing so many brightly coloured, garish clothes. I think it would utterly transform that organisation. Isn't that obnoxious? It's a little bit obnoxious to say it, but I think he's right. I think he was right.
I don't think your dad was obnoxious to recognise that, because he's talking about something from the inside. He's talking about an embodied experience of being dismissed as somebody who is in the process of protesting. So his observation is not obnoxious. It feels that we are weirdly less able to absorb difference when we are in a group.
Oh, it's so interesting. To me, what you've just said is so interesting. It's part of being in a group is actually not absorbing difference.
But I was watching, what was I watching? I was watching either a Studio 54 documentary or a Halston documentary. But there was some footage from Studio 54, the New York club. And it would have been the late 70s, I guess.
It's heyday.
The kind of high disco sort of terrain. And what was fascinating was watching how different everybody looked in this space.
Within, you mean to each other?
Yeah, they were all different from one another. Not as in different to the way we look now, but there wasn't a sense that there was something uniform in the display. And I would say probably, although not exclusively, but probably this felt like quite a queer landscape. It was a really rich tapestry of different displays of selfhood through costuming.
Oh, beautiful. Can you just, I'm just wondering, because not all of our listeners are so versed in, let's say, queer theory. When you use the word queer in that context, can you describe what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the word queer here.
Also, that's just a sneaky way of saying, can you clarify for me what you mean?
When I say queer in this context, I guess, queer as in connected to narratives of otherness in direct competition with heteronormative ideas.
Like the disruption of normalcy. Normality.
Heteronormativity specifically, the idea that sex is connected to procreation and is connected to the idea of the nuclear family unit, and so queerness is the unsettling of all of those narratives.
Or as a verb, to queer something.
Yes, to queer the pitch, we might sort of
it's
historically.
almost a sports metaphor.
I think I also use the term queer in relationship to something like Studio 54 because it's just a little bit more broad than sort of saying LGBT or LGBTQIA+, because that's connected directly to questions of sexuality, whereas I think queerness in the kind of... It's just got a slightly broader frame of reference. There obviously are questions about whether or not it's appropriation, me using it, but it just sort of expands the terrain slightly away from an explicit debate about sexuality to include questions of otherness. So I would say that the thing about queer theory is queer theory grows out of feminist studies. And so there is absolutely a clear overlap between feminism and queer theory. Mm-hmm. And so there's that stuff happening as well. And I think at the inception of feminism and queer theory as an overlap, once again, there was more shared territory than I think perhaps we might understand now where...
Gee, we're good at siloing, aren't we?
Yeah.
Boy, we're good at it.
I think one of the things that... It's really easy for me to say this makes me really sad because I as much as I'm trying to educate myself about these territories, I do very easily sit outside of it because of how I display.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be pulled into any of these narratives just because of how I look. Or
so there's sort of safety and there's effectively implicit or no, explicit safety because of how you, as you say, display.
Absolutely. And also because of it's not just display, but it's how I choose to live my life. I live my life in a very heteronormative, a very non-queer way. I am a married man with a mortgage and a dog, and I do all of those things which to the outside, I've not had a same-sex experience as an adult, as a kid, but but by that I mean prepubescent kid.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that counts as I'm not sure it counts as a sexual experience.
Yes, I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm pretty sure that's an incredibly common experience for I don't know about for girls, but for boys to have same-sex experiences prepubescent.
We're effectively talking playing doctors, aren't we?
Exactly.
And so so my prepubescent experiences span gender.
Yeah, I'm not sure you can tick the bisexual box. Yes,
no,
I
don't think I can, but I think perhaps in terms of my desire, I could.
That's basically that strange old thing about, well, just because you haven't had sex with a man doesn't mean, like, it's a strange line. It's such an arbitrary line, isn't it?
Exactly that, and that's
like a kiss enough, tongue, first base, second base. That's for American listeners. I don't know what they mean.
What becomes like
box tickable,
heteronormative. Experiences of adolescent sexuality versus something which becomes more bi-curious, and the complexity there. It takes us to. I'm now not talking about queer theory at all. I'm talking about the use of heterosexual and bisexual and homosexual being so totally limited, and these are. Nominal gradations which were fixed in the Victorian era.
Yes.
So we are stuck with that tick box of three options that is based upon one of the most repressive periods in history, and yet we still think, oh, this is an okay way to articulate.
This sums us up.
Yeah. I was watching the drag queen Trixie Mattel talk.
Thank God you've got off the documentaries.
Yeah, I was watching the drag queen Trixie Mattel talk to another drag queen, Katya, and they were talking about the porn that they'd gotten into during lockdown. And Trixie started to talk about how she'd started watching bisexual porn, and then she'd started to watch lesbian porn, and then she'd started to watch women masturbating by themselves. And bearing in mind, Trixie Mattel is a gay man who's never had an experience with a woman.
So that's something that Trixie says openly.
Absolutely.
Like it's
Otherwise,
known.
I wouldn't know that information if Trixie hadn't said that in various podcasts and things like that. So I think Trixie's real name is Brian. I want to say Furkis, but I can't quite remember if that's true.
Sorry, it's just so great that Brian, the degrees of separation between Brian and Trixie, it's so beautiful, so beautiful.
But when Trixie is talking about watching women masturbate and masturbating to that, and then saying, maybe I'm not as gay
Gay.
as I thought I was. And that's coming from, from a Kinsey 6.
Strong 6.
A strong 6. And that becomes, for me, a really interesting discussion about the complexity of human sexuality and the lack of narratives that we have to be able to articulate it. Because
lack and nuance.
Yeah, because we're stuck behind these 3 boxes that do what? That serve to separate. This is a very long way.
Also serve to separate
from...
in a way that doesn't need separation.
Yeah.
Like there are some, to me, there are some kinds of ways in which I guess I'm going to call them labels or descriptors, which are useful in the sense of they help us understand the way in which culture and societies are changing, right? Yeah. And maybe you could say that they are these 3, that they're how do you say, they're rather they're crude at best.
Yeah, yeah.
But is it possible to say that they also do give us some information about the way culture is changing, that when you tick that box, that more people are now ticking the bisexual box? Is it effectively becomes an indicator that our relationship to, let's say, attractiveness to gender or genders is changing in time? I
think there is probably something there. Absolutely. But I think what brought us in was that idea of the way the people at the march, there is this soup of...
Oh, yeah, we were at Extinction Rebellion.
Yeah, but we got to Extinction Rebellion through the soup of the Freedom March. That you talked about there being people that were...
You couldn't say it's this kind of person.
Yeah.
They were, and the way they were dressed, everything was, they were uniquely diverse.
Yeah, I just have to go and shut the door because Jeff just opened it. I'll be 1 second.
Cool. It's tempting to say something which you can't possibly leave out, which refers to all the things that we've been talking about. But I can't do that. I'm just not clever enough. So, something about Kinsey 6. Kinsey. I keep saying it wrong.
What are you saying wrong?
I just keep saying Kinsey and not Kinsey.
I think people will be fine.
Yeah, I was trying to say something smart that you wouldn't be able to cut out, and then I was recognizing that I wasn't able to doing that. So I was reflecting in real time about my lack of smartness. You'll hear it.
I look forward to it. And I know we wandered off because your dad was interested in display.
Yeah, and understanding the performance of marching.
Yeah. And then you talked about the obnoxiousness of thinking that Extinction Rebellion would, if they could learn from that. But I do wonder if this is again something to do with the fact that as we as we self-define in particular ways, we find it less and less easy to accept difference into the grouping because we're all, I don't know how to articulate it, Simon.
Well, it seems to me you're bumping around the extraordinary the fact, I guess I'll say, as humans, our social sort of conditioning and the nature of us being such powerfully social animals, and that part of that way in which our sort of social underpinnings reveals itself is in identification with groups. And the most obvious one of those, and the most easily adjustable, other than changing your hair color, is the clothes we wear.
Yeah.
And it's and that's curious in a way because it reminds me of, I remember my mother talking about how she liked school uniforms because they prevented that, there's the nerds, there's the sporties, there's the, right? It unified. It stopped that kind of radical division of people into, and you also appreciate the other side of that argument. But it's a really curious tension, I'll say.
It feels what we have at the moment is a version of we're all wearing the uniform of the school that we go to, though.
Yes, exactly.
We're not displaying our difference. We're actually displaying our similarity and our kind of the ubiquity of display in relationship to this kind of thinking.
Yeah. And I think Extinction Rebellion, again, love them, but I think they're the most exaggerated and heightened form of that at the moment.
Because they look in a particular way?
Yeah, they all look exactly the same.
Sort of
hair, everything. It's a uniform. They're effectively wearing a uniform. It's just not brown suits.
Right. So it's that what I think was articulate, and I'm asking this because I wasn't at an Extinction Rebellion meeting, and I live in a town where everybody, I think, looks the way that you're describing.
Pretty much, yeah. Lots of rainbow, lots of reds, lots of things dangling.
So you are describing Totnes Market on a Saturday.
I am.
Which is probably why I think I find that less. I now find that a lot less arresting and a lot less irritating as an aesthetic, because it's very normalized to me.
Yeah. It's not that I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with the aesthetic. What I'm suggesting is that the uniformity of it in a group,
the ubiquity
means
of that aesthetic.
It's not able to represent anyone except people who look like that and dress like that. I don't feel represented by them, even though I totally agree. But they have not someone with a kind of squared off new backpack that has a little compartment for your water and, basically a nerd backpack. I'm not in that group.
Is that why Greta Thunberg has sort of managed to get such cultural penetration? I don't mean
we can see ourselves in her. I mean, I don't know in terms of the color of her skin and how it might be people who are who are brown and as they say BIPOCs who are thinking deeply about climate change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they see themselves in her like I see myself in her as a young teenager? Even though
absolutely, yeah, of course.
And I mean, we're getting right off track here. Or maybe not. But yeah, I'm tempted to follow that little lead there. But it's such a strong. I think this thing about identity, and when I use it in the sense of not necessarily in the sense of politics, but in the sense of how it is that we see ourselves and how it is that we align ourselves with groups, it's so profound and so powerful, and I recognize that because of all those feelings that all of us will have had as teenagers, which is, how do I fit in here? I don't want to fit in there. Like that desire to fit in, and and it's also it's heartbreaking when I see teenagers performing those games. And it's so clearly seeing them perform those games. And I get it. It's not that it's heartbreaking in the sense of, it would be so much easier if we didn't do that. But then we wouldn't be humans if we didn't do that. It sort of defines us, I guess, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I wish it didn't.
That's just that idea of it defining us and it being kind of like a necessary rite of passage. Makes me so itchy.
I mean, also I might be wrong. I don't.
I think
I kind of want to be wrong.
Really. Yeah, I'm not offering this as a critique of you. I'm saying it makes me feel itchy because I worry about all those kids who just think I can't see myself in this landscape, and therefore I have no value. And then they take their own lives, or they make an attempt to take their own lives, and that's that just makes me go. I would like us to be able to negotiate humanity in a way that didn't make people feel so invisible, so excluded. Because like you, it is heartbreaking to watch when you see the popular kids taking up so much space comfortably and the unpopular kids being made to reduce themselves. And I am not offering this here as a binary of right and wrong, because I know that the popular kids are having to perform something.
They're playing the same game.
Yeah. And I know that is not necessarily doing something which is better for their mental health, or they don't go home and, want to stab things in their legs.
Yeah, I mean, I really mean this as a serious thing, and I'm not trying to trivialize what you've just talked about at all. But there is a Bruce Springsteen song called "Glory Days," and it's him kind of going, remember about this guy who was a high school baseball star or whatever, and look at him now. And there's this kind of, and it's not his life's trash now. But it is going, wow, those days they have their time and place, and they don't necessarily define who it is that we become or who it is that we are, and it's something for me. I remember when I heard that as a teenager. So this is 1980, whatever, it came out 1985, maybe 84. So I was 16, 17, and I understood that this, I mean, what was he? He would have been in his mid-30s, singing about that thing. So he was singing about it effectively to me in a way which was, and I was going, yeah, I'm not, it's not going to be like that. But so I don't know, I'm, rabbiting on now, but yeah, that, and I don't mean to trivialize what you've just said, because what you've said, and you can absolutely cut Bruce out again, but, but, it is so
I don't
so
think
complex.
you trivialized it, and I also don't think I want to cut Bruce out. I think there's a flip side of the Glory Days narrative that Bruce Springsteen sings, which is I don't know if it's an advertisement campaign, it will be in the show notes, of the It Gets Better campaign that's been across the States, which has been aimed at LGBTQIA plus youths, that it gets better. Yeah. And both of those, for me, feel problematic, because they're both saying the same thing, which is either this is a high point that you won't continue to keep, so you've got to think about that,
or your time might still be yet to come.
Exactly. Whereas, why do we think it's okay to tell kids that you don't have to live in this moment?
Yeah, it's shit now,
or it's brilliant now, and it won't always be. But
I think I agree.
Why? Yeah, it just we're reducing the idea of being present and being kind to one another in this moment, and giving space to difference in this moment, and not saying, don't worry, because eventually you'll be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you can shit on all those people who were mean to you when you were a kid. And it's like, fuck me, there's a lot of clear water between this moment here.
It is I mean, I'm so reluctant. That campaign is it's so interesting, because it's my kind of instinctive response is to go, yeah, it's a really important thing to hear, right? But it's akin to Imran Khan, who's the leader of Pakistan, recently had a go at the women of Pakistan who are not wearing long enough skirts. Yeah. That they were responsible for rape culture in Pakistan. Yeah. And it's akin to that. It's not. Why aren't we talking about why it's not good for these kids now? Yeah. Right? It's still deflecting from who is responsible for the pain.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Inflicting the pain. And it's just why we always focus on victims. And again, I get it in the sense of, yes, we need to look after and take care of it, but really, it's all about the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. The It Gets Better narrative, it makes me think of there's a play called The Laramie Project, which is a piece of verbatim theatre. Yeah,
say the name again?
Laramie, the Laramie Project. It's named after the town in
the Midwest,
the middle. Yeah, I don't know where. But
Wyoming. I'm guessing Wyoming.
Oh, you're probably right. It sounds Wyomingy, but it's the story of a student called Matthew Shepard, and he was murdered. And the kind of it's a beautiful piece. I very rarely say plays are good, because it's not a form that I'm fond of, but it's a beautiful play.
You mean verbatim, or just plays in general?
No, plays in general. I often find plays a little overwritten for me, because I've been brought up more on film and TV, which has a slightly less hyperbolic landscape. I sometimes struggle with the poetry of plays, which is my problem, not plays' problem. But the Laramie Project, because it's a kind of a verbatim approach, is very grounded and real, because it's real people's words. But
just to say, a verbatim project is when actors or directors take real words spoken by real people, and then they are like in almost like they've interviewed a whole lot of people, and then they weave those into a narrative. I'm just trying to think about
that's sorry, yes, of course, that's a beautiful description of verbatim, and it kind of emerges as a form round about the mid 1960s.
I didn't realize it was that old.
Yeah, it comes about. I mean, there's arguments that it predates that, but I think the form as we understand it comes about because of the easy accessibility to handheld recording devices. So you could go out
technological
into the field.
affordances.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a strong connection between technological affordances and the development of artistic product. British social realism in TV develops because of
Video cameras.
No, actually, it's the 16mm camera.
Ah,
The 16mm film camera, Ken Loach takes one out and does Kathy Come Home. Kathy Come Home as a result of talking
not
about...
8mm, you're talking 16mm,
No,
definitely?
16mm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 16mm. Yeah, and he does Kathy Come Home, which shines a light on homelessness, and it's from that film that Shelter happens. So we've got this brilliant sort of interconnection between the critical mass of technology, the artistic use of it, and then the impact on social conditions.
You're a very knowledgeable person, Lee Miller, and your voice is amazing. Can I just say, you've got
Shut
the
up.
best voice for podcasts.
Shut up.
No, but you know stuff, man, about theatre.
I was going to say I kind of should know some stuff, but the Laramie Project, for me, is one of those things that gives lie to the received wisdom of it gets better, because this is a guy who I think ends up being it's horrifying, but I think ends up being hung on a fence. I think I can't. It's grim. It's graphic. It's horrifying. How do you tell his family, his friends, that it gets better? Because that is a piece of homophobic hate crime right there.
And it doesn't get better, actually.
And it doesn't get better. It doesn't get better for them.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better for that community. I mean, in lots of ways, the
trauma's embedded in the community.
Absolutely. And if we just say it gets better, we are constantly deferring the conversation.
Oh.
We're constantly putting it off. And that's the flip side of Glory Days. Because it's the same conversation, I think.
I think you're right. And again, I don't listen to Glory Days a lot now. I also don't want to defend it, but in the sense that, because at the time, though, I remember it being so important, that idea that this is not how my life necessarily will be. You know, there was something really important about that.
Yeah.
And I totally appreciate the connection you've made with It Gets Better campaign.
And I don't think this is again where we get stuck, because, you know, when we have conversations...
It's not like we're saying either of those things are necessarily bad.
Exactly, because we get fixed in this sort of like, now I sound like I've said, It Gets Better
was
is a terrible project.
Which, of course, is not.
Glory...
I know, yeah.
No, I think both of them are incredibly important to remind us that who we are at high school is not who we are through our lives, or in either direction. Either we have the potential to grow, but what we miss then is, if we're constantly in a process of recognizing that the future is a different game, we don't attend to the moment that we're in. But I suppose that takes us back to climate emergency, doesn't it? And Extinction Rebellion, that we constantly push off the conversation down the road because, well, at the moment, you know, the forests aren't burning, unless you happen to live where the forests are burning. Extinction
Rebellion is such interesting, because again, I'm just so with it in the sense that this is an emergency and direct action needs to be taken now. Protest is so complex, isn't it? Because I just have this sneaky suspicion that it actually turns people against the things they're wanting to do. And so I never know. Then I just get in a whirlpool of mess about direct action and the nature of protest and its value.
Well... I think you just spoke a massive mouthful there, Simon.
I'm so sorry, and I hope you cut it out, because it might be too much.
It feels that this is probably, I don't know, this is a conversation that it feels overdue.